Ramesses II is certainly one of the most important pharaohs in Egyptian history. He is the son of Seti I and the grandson of Ramesses I, a high-ranking military man who succeeded his friend the pharaoh Horemheb. He was the pharaoh who began what is called the Ramesside dynasty. When the young Ramesses ascended the throne of Egypt around 1280 before Christ, after his father died, he was unaware that he was about to begin a 66-year reign, one of the longest in Egyptian history. As it was the custom for kings, he adopted a coronation name, which is the name by which all Egyptians knew him, User Matre Setepenre. It's a little bit long, isn't it? In fact, this name is long because it's a sentence, which means the justice of Ra is powerful. Ramesses is the chosen one of Ra. By this sentence, Ramesses II showed that he was under the protection of Ra, the king of the gods. Fortunately for us, Egyptologists preferred to refer to him by his birth name. When he became king, Prince Ramesses II had at least two wives, Nefertari and Isis Nefret. To be sure, he had an heir to succeed him, and also because he loved the women so much, Ramesses II married more than 100 of them. As a logical result, he had many children, more than 200. But his two main wives always remained Queen Nefertari and Queen Isis Nefret. In fact, it was one of Isis Nefret's sons, Meremta, who succeeded him. Like many pharaohs before him, Ramesses II manipulated the people and lied to convince them that he was even more talented than the kings of the past, very intelligent and stronger than his neighbors with whom he was at war. And do you know why it worked? Because he used the power of the written word and the image. First of all, because he wrote text on statues and especially on the walls of temples and palaces, where he told his own version of the truth. For the people, if it was written by the order of Pharaoh, it had to be true. Most people couldn't read, but there were always people who could and told others what was written. For example, he wrote that he was so good that his father came to him for advice when he had trouble running, even though he was only a child. But Ramesses II did not stop there. He also used the power of the image to impress his subjects. Once again, on the walls of palaces and temples all over Egypt, he had huge scenes engraved where he appeared as a giant, fighting and scaring off his enemies, or worse, about to kill them. Everywhere he appeared victorious, as the defender of Egypt, a powerful king that nothing could resist. Of course, when the Egyptians saw his images, they were impressed by his size, power and strength. And so they were convinced that Ramesses II was too strong. And he was, but not always. One of his greatest battles took place in Kadesh, a city located in Syria. At the time, Syria did not exist yet, and its territory was disputed between the Egyptians, who wanted to govern the area, and the powerful neighbors, the Hittites. Seti I, the father of Ramesses II, took him to war while he was still a teenager, and succeeded in taking back from the Hittites the city, which became Egyptian again. But he ended up losing it, and Ramesses II swore to take it back himself one day. And he did exactly that. When he ascended the throne, he left with his army, but he fell into a trap set for him by the Hittite king Muwatalli. He miraculously escaped death, and there was a terrible battle between both armies. It was, by the way, the first great battle in history. But the two armies were as strong as each other, and none of them really managed to gain an advantage over the other. Ramesses II and Muwatalli decided to sign a peace treaty, the first in history, and to prove his good faith, the Hittite king decided to give his niece in marriage to Ramesses II. So the young king did not win the war, but he did not lose it either. but he was still going to tell a huge lie on his return to Egypt. On the walls of several buildings, he had the text and scenes inscribed to make him look like the winner. Everywhere, people believed that he won, even though the city of Kadesh remained in the hands of the Hittites. He even built one of the most famous Egyptian temples in Abu Simbel to celebrate his victory. And yet, we know that it's not true, because unfortunately for Ramesses II, a clay tablet written in Hittite was found mentioning that both kings agreed to make peace. You see, he was a bit of a liar. In fact, he lied for two reasons. First, because he wanted to show his subjects that he was a super pharaoh, almost a god, a king who always did more and always better than the others. And it was not completely false. We do not know, for example, any pharaoh who had as many statues made of himself. Secondly, he knew that long after his death, priests would continue to tell about his story, his life, based on what he wrote, and therefore he wanted to personally control what will be said and especially written about him. We're lucky that the mummy of Ramesses II was so well preserved, and it had taught us a lot about the king and his health. Ramesses II was 1.70 meters tall, which is not a lot for a man today, but it was during this era, and he lived for an extremely long time since he died around 90 years old. This is absolutely huge, because in antiquity, life expectancy was closer to 30 years for men. Ramesses II was also red-haired, which was very rare and must not always have been easy for him, since it was the color associated with the god of chaos, Set. Although Set had saved men when he rescued Ra, who was frightened by the terrible snake Apep, Egyptians did not have a good opinion of him. Ramesses' family still tried to give the god a good image, and besides, the father of Ramesses II was called Seti. Lastly, several medical examinations showed that the king suffered from severe health problems after he was about 60. A very painful disease gradually deformed his spine, so that he could no longer stand up straight towards the end of his life. And an examination of his teeth showed that he had also suffered great pain, with cavities, infections and teeth that eventually fell out. Look, the hole you see there had been provoked by the infection of a tooth, which caused what we call a dental abscess. And as we didn't know how to cure it at the time, the infection blew a hole in his gums. This is absolutely terrible, because at the time, doctors did not know how to treat any of his health problems and had no medicines to relieve him. When he died, Ramesses II was mummified, and then his mummy was placed on a boat from the capital Pi-Ramesses in the north of the country and sent south to be buried at Thebes in the Valley of the Kings, the cemetery of the pharaohs at the time. Would it surprise you if I said that with its length of 168 meters long, his tomb is the longest in the Valley of the Kings?